close our eyes and take 6 slow, deep, relaxing breaths. With every inhale, we increase the light, and with every exhale, we let go of all tension in anything that we do not want in our mind, emotions, and body. We picture ourselves on top of a beautiful mountain in the center of a circular grove of trees, and in the center of our circle blazes a beautiful bonfire, and the sacred fire is blessed, and it is the light of perfect love and perfect trust, and it burns away everything that is unlike itself. And into this sacred circle, we invite the presence of our Mother and Father, and all the angels and teachers with whom we work, our mental teachers, spirit guides. And we also bring into this sacred space the thoughts of anybody who is our loved one that we are wanting to bless. We're grateful for the time that we spend together. Thank you very much. Together we say, blessed be.
Blessed be.
I call it the witch's workshop. What do you think the witch's workshop is?
It's like a kitchen with a big boiling pot.
Yeah.
Newt, bat toes.
My herbs hanging.
Right.
Yes, with spinning wheel, you know.
And that's fine. But the witch's workshop really, or the magician's workshop, or the magic's workshop, whatever you want to call it, is truly the imagination. And it's funny because there's almost like a conspiracy in the world to say, oh, that's just your imagination, to discount the imagination as if it's something that's less than powerful. And it's interesting too, because some occult authors will talk about the difference between the mundane imagination and the magical imagination, as if, you know, there's some sort of separation or something, which, I mean, I guess I understand where they're coming from, but really, I mean, there's just imagination. It's the ability to image, you know, the ability to create. And we understand that, I think, in most of us that have studied this stuff for long enough, we really do understand that if we get our minds focused on a desire, that we can create that desire. I mean, hopefully we've had some success in that so that we can say that that's true. And if not, you know, I invite you to start proving it for yourself. But the thing that I think gets sort of not discussed enough, at least not when I was ever in training, was all of the time when we're not doing spell work, what are we using our imagination on? I remember when I was probably about 21 years old, and I was on a road trip with a friend, and I got a really bad kink in my neck. I mean, really bad, from just sitting in that horrible, awful car of his. And we had a stopover, you know, we spent the night at somebody's house or something, I don't remember. And I was literally, I couldn't move my neck, and I was in such pain. And there came to be and he was very, you know, he was very sympathetic and everything. But by the next day, when I was still bitching about my neck, he said, now you're creating it. And I thought to myself, you know, because I'd already been in all of this for long enough, and I'm like thinking, I hate it when people use my own shit on me like that, you know. But he was so right. You know, I was creating it. I was imagining how I'm going to handle the neck pain. What am I going to, you know, can I get some more aspirin somewhere? I mean, I was thinking in terms of like, now what am I going to do once we get to San Francisco? I'm not going to be able to have fun because my neck hurts so badly. And I kept thinking in terms of what am I going to do because of the neck pain, rather than imagining that my neck was free and without the pain, which is the free and healthy, because that was the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is not always the highest road. The path of least resistance is just to eat the donut, which is sometimes okay, but not if that's your steady diet. The path of the least resistance is always to go for the most negative thought. And another example of that happened probably a couple years, 2 or 3 years later, after I had been considering myself a teacher in the craft, and we all go through that sort of ego arc where we think we're something really special, and some of us never get out of it. Hopefully, I did, but I remember I was moaning and complaining to a friend of mine who was not in the craft all about my financial situation, and after about 20 minutes of this, she said, "I thought you said you're a witch. I mean, can't you just do a spell on that or something? Why do you have to complain about being broke? Why can't you do something?" And I thought, oh, fuck. Again, I get foiled again. But that sort of thing was never taught in my training. Was not ever taught about all of the times that we spend creating what we don't want by the negative use of our imagination. And it's almost like we're in this habitual self-hexing mode, and that we hope that we can do like one little spell every so often to ease a little pain, and we never even look at how much of that pain is self-inflicted. And the problem with that is that somebody will say, well, you shouldn't blame the victim. Some people really do have bad things happen in their life, and you can't say that they're 100% responsible for the bad things in their life, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm never even talking about that. I'm not even in that frame of mind. I'm saying, even in the midst of the worst moment in your life, when you're when you're at death's door, how are you using your imagination? Are you imagining dying, or are you imagining getting better? Are you imagining getting out of the problem, or are you imagining the worst is yet to come? And luckily for us, we have a psychic immune system that's built into us, so that even just like with people that eat really poor diets, and they do a lot of drugs, and they drink a lot of booze, and they never get any exercise, and they even with the most unhealthy of lifestyle, the body has a tendency towards life. It has a tendency to try to self-regulate. Same thing goes with our psychic system, that even with the most negative garbage junk food that we're constantly thinking, pouring into our psyche, it's still going to keep us fairly safe, in spite of ourselves. But it could be so much better if we just gave it, if we gave it the right mental food. Just like some people are sort of mildly sick all the time, and that's because they don't do anything for their own health. They don't ever do anything. They don't do any kind of exercise. They don't eat any kind of green vegetable. They never do anything good for themselves. They don't even take vitamins. And so that they're always in this sort of mild misery, physically. So yeah, their body is doing its best given all of the abuse it's taking, but imagine how much better they could feel if they did something proactive and positive for their bodies. Same thing goes with our magical selves, with how we use our witch's workshop, how we use our mind. Because if just for instance, some people, when they get up in the morning, they automatically think, ugh, what do I have to do today? Oh, I gotta go to work. There's no coffee made. That's the first thing that they do, is they set the tone of their day as, and my habit, my natural state of mind when I wake up is sort of bleh, naturally. I think it's just my birth script or something, because I had a really traumatic birth. I think I'm just naturally coded towards ugh. And the farther I can get away from sleep, the better, And so what I've had to do is, the first thing, no matter what I'm feeling, is start to visualize, imagine something that I want. Imagine that I'm feeling good. Imagine that, and I even go backwards. Imagine that I had a great night's sleep. Imagine that I feel good. Imagine that my day is going to be good. Imagine whatever symbolically works for me, white light or whatever, so that the first thing I think about is what I want my day to look like. And so I'm in a proactive state, because it goes against the grain of what I naturally want to do. I really want to just wallow in how icky everything is. So I make myself do that. I make myself do that the first thing in the morning, and I've been doing that for many years, and it really makes a difference. But it's not something that you can just do once. It's something that you have to do just like any kind of exercise on a regular basis. And then in the midst of it all, I have to, every so often, I have to just, even if I have to set my alarm, beep, 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 check in. What am I thinking? What am I imagining? Today, I had caught myself. I have an issue going on, an opportunity for growth, let's say, with a few people in my life that are just a lot of work for me. It's just a lot of work for me to just not want to just cut ties and say, I'm done with you. And sometimes that's positive, but at the same time, I'm thinking to myself today, but how much of that is me? I mean, it's like I'm constantly, it's like I was driving around and I caught myself ruminating on conversations that I wanted to have with these people that were so negative, and just imaginary conversations, just imagining myself having these horrible conversations with these people. And I'm thinking, well, no wonder your relationships with them are so horrible. Look at what you're doing. I'm not happy unless they're wrong. I'm not satisfied unless I can blame them. And so I had to remember, I had to give myself a little moment of, because nobody else was going to do it for me. I had to give myself a little moment of, do you want to keep hexing this situation, or do you want to bless it? I mean, which way do you want to go? Because you always get back what you put into something. And if you hex something, you will be hexed 3 times greater. I mean, that's how it works. So if I keep hexing these people in my mind, even though I would never in the moment admit that that's what I'm doing, but I think that they are horrible, awful, evil people, and they're wrong, and that's a hex, right? So I'm using my imagination in a very dark way. But to perpetuate that negativity, because I'm not happy unless they're wrong. And somehow, if I can feel like I'm right long enough, somehow it's going to magically resolve itself. And I know that's never going to happen. So who's got to be the powerful one here? I'm the only one that can make that decision. So I have to bless the situation. I have to bless this person. I have to forgive this person. I have to desire their success and their happiness and all of that stuff. And when I did that, it was just like, why was I so mad at them again?
And it allows you to find appreciation for who they are and what they may, contribute.
You're probably right, but I wasn't even that far into it. I was just at the point of like, why was I so habituated to this negative thinking? Because I know for a fact that was a pattern, and that if it wasn't them, it would have been somebody else.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because if I look back at my life, there's always one of those hanging around. There's always one of those hanging around. Isn't there one of those hanging around for almost everybody, where we're just like, I can't stand that person. This person bugs the shit out of me. You have to work with these people. Yes. Sometimes there's it's usually a work relationship, let's be honest. I mean, because those are the only times, or school or teacher or something like that, where you're forced into a situation to be with somebody that you normally wouldn't really want to play with. But anyway, but that was just an example. I remember I was in a situation once where all I could do was think of, I'll never be able to afford this. There's no way that I'm going to be able to get my needs met in this situation, blah, 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 blah. Before anything ever even happened, I had already started the workshop of the witch's workshop to hex my finances, way before anything started happening. Luckily, I went, whoa, what are you doing? And I just reversed it immediately, because luckily, like I said, our psychic system there's an immune system that you probably aren't going to create as woefully as what you're worried about. but it's definitely not helping. It's definitely not helping. So for those people that say, well, you can't say that somebody with cancer created that cancer for themselves. I'm like, well, maybe you can and maybe you can't. But I don't even care if they did or not. What I'm saying is if you've got the cancer, how are you spending your imagination? Are you spending your imagination thinking about how you're going to get better? Or are you thinking about how it's going to get worse? That's all. You have a choice.
Cancer or cold, it's the same thing.
Yeah, no matter what it is. So regardless of what situation we're in, my point is we're still responsible for how we're thinking. We can make any choice nobody can ever force you to think anything that you don't want to think. And one of the best testaments to this in our modern times is Jim Stockdale. Do you know who that is, James Stockdale? He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and he was the highest commanding officer in his regiment that was captured, and he was being a leader to his platoon in the prison, and they discovered that he was doing that, so they put him in solitary confinement with leg irons, so that he wouldn't have any way of communicating with them. And he was in solitary confinement for years like that. And he figured out a way to do Morse code to communicate with them through the walls. And all he did was he kept saying, because his background is in Stoicism, the philosophy of Stoicism, which is just prior to Neoplatonic thought. So he was like, again, I'm going to get through this, and we're going to get through this one way or another, but they're not going to take my mind from me. And after he got out of that, he became a professor of philosophy at Stanford University. So it was a great example of that. That most people that would have given up, that most people all they would do is ruminate over. There's no way out of this, and I'm just going to die. His perspective is, well, I'm still their commanding officer, so we're going to find a way to communicate with them. And then second of all, I'm going to keep my mind on what I'm going to do when I get out of this. Because it's going to happen. And it did happen. And he was very clear about that. So you should read his book, Jim Stockdale's book. It's fascinating.
What war was it?
Vietnam War. Yeah. So I guess my point is that if he can get through that by virtue of the power of his imagination, I can get through these little teeny things, like when somebody cuts me off on the freeway and things like that. Have you ever gone through a moment where it's not necessarily road rage, but it's just like that piece of shit, and you just actually are imagining how horrible they are as a person because they did that, and you don't know why they cut you off. They might be a horrible person, they might not be a horrible person, but in your mind, there's all of this rage going through through the ethers to this poor person that may or may not even deserve it, and you definitely don't deserve it in your own psyche, right? So I guess my point also is the way that we work is we want you to have a nice set of goals, and we want you to have always working on something. I always, whenever I teach a class, I don't want people to just work magic for the sake of it, just for nothing. Just like get some goals. Get some, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? What do you want to work on? What is the most important thing? What gets your juices flowing? What do you want? And so then we work on that. What would it look like? So write a story if you want to. Like, you could write a little screenplay. What would it look like? However you want to do so that you can focus your imagination on that is in the most detailed way possible. Make it as real as possible for yourself. And usually when we do that, it's because we're trying to address something that we don't want. Usually when we work on magic, it's because we desire something that we don't have. Not because we're desiring something that we already have. I mean, it would be silly to just work magic on something that already exists, Yeah, You know, I want to be a man. I mean, that wouldn't be interesting. I couldn't get desired. You know, I couldn't get any desire pumping. Usually, it's something that we don't have. Sometimes it's also to address a problem that we have. So desire is a very important thing in the universe. Desire is a very powerful and good thing. All desire, if it's pure, is usually your higher self or your God self or whatever you want to call it, prodding you into where you need to be. So if you want to have more money, that's a holy desire. If you're hungry, you know, a burrito is your savior. You know, not some sort of philosophical construct. You know, so if you need something, then the desire for that needs satisfaction is a holy thing, and that deserves your attention. But then what we have to be, where the discipline comes in is when the other 24 and a half hours a day that we're not doing that controlled visualization, how are we using our mind to support that? Because usually what happens that I've noticed is somebody will say, oh, I did a spell and it didn't work. And I'm thinking, okay, I happen to know you, and all you ever do is bitch about your problem. So I'm not surprised that it didn't work. Nothing personal. I'm not saying that to be critical, but all I ever hear from you is how you don't have. What is your little concocted little 30-minute spell going to do to combat all of that? Your mind is really, really powerful. You know, so your spell needs to be, why don't we do a spell on you being more positive about this? You know, why don't we do a spell on you being more disciplined with your mind so that you don't do a spell and then undo the spell.
Yeah, negate it.
Negate your spell with something else. What you're doing is you're mocking your spell when you do that. It's as if you're going, neener, 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 you can't have what you want. You know, it's as if you are literally mocking yourself.
Well, it's like,
Comes from the idea that's, I mean, if you want to get into real esotericism with this, the idea of the fall from grace in the Bible is an allegory. It's a story about what we do every single minute when we try to say, I'm more powerful than God. And the way you can be more powerful than God is by negating yourself, by saying, look at how you messed up with me. Look at how bad I am. Because the best way that you can, and God not necessarily meaning the Father in the sky, but I mean divinity, the only way that you can exalt infinite mind, infinite being, infinite intelligence, the infinite creative principle is by being the best you can be. If you are constantly negating yourself, you're actually saying that God didn't do a good job with you. So esoterically, every time we negate ourselves, every time we put ourselves down, we're actually trying to usurp God's role. That's the Gnostic interpretation of that kind of thing. Does that make sense? So the only way, which is not the truth in the Lucifer myth. The Lucifer myth actually represents something completely different. The Lucifer myth actually represents is more of a Promethean myth, but the idea of a being falling from grace is not that they sinned. It's that they're starting to view themselves as fallen, as less than, as not good enough, as beneath their potential being. That's what that means. It's not that you ate an apple and you're being punished by some external force. It's that you ate the fruit that gave you the choice to decide whether you're good enough or not, and you just decided, I'm not good enough.
So then that's a fine line, as you started here, about you can become real powerful and real, egotistical on one hand, and yet on the other hand, it's so easy to be negative.
Right.
That's really a fine balance of what you said. You got to wake up in the morning and nip it right in the butt.
Right
there, because you can spin high, you can spin low.
And usually there are two poles of the same problem. Usually people that are real egotistical don't think very highly of themselves. I know that was the case with me. When I was really arrogant, it's because I was trying to hide the fact that I thought I was not good enough. But then when my self-esteem started rising, I didn't have any desire to be arrogant because I realized that wasn't truth. That, I didn't have any reason to be arrogant. Yeah. Because I already knew I was great. You know what I'm saying? But if you know you're great and you're honest about that, it's because you know everybody else is too.
Yeah.
What ought it be? That's what I like. What ought it be? It ought to be perfect. I ought to be wealthy. I ought to be healthy. I ought to be happy. I ought to be satisfied. That workshop in reverse is what we're kind of talking about before too, is if you had a bad day, what should it have been? What would you have liked it to look like? Bad day, if something horrible happened to you and before you go to bed, you imagine it working out the way you wanted it to work out, all that's doing is breaking a pattern for you. And it's showing your mind how to move into it when it comes around again the way you want it to be. Because everything always comes around again. Everything's in cycles.
Oh, yeah.
Training your mind to see that through the reverie and even not even working through just the feelings, but telling yourself, hey, this is what it needs to be.
Right.
You've already set the stage, at least for the option of that to happen.
Well, and at first, even those of us who are really advanced, at first when we do this, it seems like, is this going to make any difference? Until it does. Until the event, until something just clicks and you get what you wanted in the physical world, and it actually happens. And then what the people tend to do is they get a lot of the goodies and things go well for them and they stop doing it. Mm-hmm. They stop exercising because they got the body they wanted, and then they just start eating what they want and they stop exercising. They get the situations they want and then they stop doing the work. And then they have to go, and then they go back into problems. And it seems like when that happens, it's sometimes harder to recover than it was to get there in the first place. Because it's like the mighty fall hard. So, but that's only a teaching tool. It's only to show you, stay with it next time. That's all the reason why that happens, is to stay with it next time. So I guess my point in tonight, I think, is just learning how we use our imagination and to be as clear and concise and as conscious as we can be. And when we catch ourselves machinating in the areas that we don't want to go, just stop it. No matter how much satisfaction we seem to be getting at the moment. Because it is kind of fun sometimes to think of the worst possible thing. I mean, let's face it, there is a little payoff there, especially when you get to hate somebody or come on, we all say, oh no, love is the way, but we all love to rag on people. We all do, even within our minds. The tool that I've found that's worked the fastest with that is bless them out of my life. I literally bless them out of my life. I bless the problem out of my life, at least. They will either go or they'll stay, depending on what it is. But if I can completely move out of my condemnation and my hex maneuvers, which is, let's be honest, that's what we're doing. We are trying to hex them, and we are actually hexing ourselves. Anytime we are thinking really negatively about somebody, we are making a decision that may or may not be true. We don't know. Nobody knows what they really are like on the inside. But if we think negatively about somebody, we are throwing negative energy at them, and we have to be responsible for that. So, but if we choose to bless them instead, it's amazing if we're consistent with it. It's not something you do once, but if you're consistent with it day in and day out, watching the relationship change. Sometimes they move away, sometimes you move away, sometimes they become a better person, sometimes you become a better person. Things change. And I just get to the point where I don't accept. I won't take no for an answer. When I've made a decision, this is going to be resolved. And when it comes back around again and it looks like it's doing the same thing, I get to the point where I'm just saying, no, I will not accept this. This is not in my wheelhouse. This is not what I want. And I really literally force myself to keep my imagination clear on it. And today, when I discovered that I was so hateful toward these people, I made the choice. I remember when I made the choice about, I don't know, 7 years ago. No, it was longer than that. It was probably more like 12 years ago. I was having some sort of financial trouble, and it was just kept coming around and around and around. Like a lot of people, it's a tough one sometimes. I remember just saying, no, we're not doing this anymore. No. And anytime some negative thing in the mail came about money, I'm like, I do not accept you. You are not going to, I'm not going to go down this road anymore. You are going to be resolved. And I kept at it. And it took a lot of repetition. Every time something would come up, I would do it again and again and again and again. And pretty soon, it just dissolved. And,
Your will was enacted.
What's that?
Your will was enacted.
It was, but it took a lot of repetition. It wasn't something that just was like, I'm going to wiggle my nose and it's all better. It was just, it was, there was magic spell work, but it was also every day when I started getting into that negative thinking about it, I would say no. And anytime the universe would present me with a situation that tried to prove to me that everything was bad, I would say, I do not accept you. Come, try again, please. You're not there yet. Undo. And, and little by little, I whittled away at it. And I know every time I use that same blessing technique, I'm using my imagination to see what I want. And sometimes it's very difficult to not wallow, but we can't afford it.
It's much easier to be like, everybody sucks, and I have to have a 10-foot wall around me all the time.
It's so easy to lie on the couch and eat bonbons and watch soaps too. That's easy, but it's not healthy. I mean, once every so often, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with having a moment. Have a day off. That's okay. But that can't be our normal, natural way of living. And it's interesting because usually, and again, you don't want to use this in a manipulative, horrible way. But if you look at the way people's lives manifest, you can. It's not rocket science to figure out what their thought systems are, what their thought forms are.
Especially if you've been there before.
Yeah. Or even if you haven't, even if you've been anywhere before, even if you've seen other people, because I remember, again, I'm not saying that people that get sick deserve to get it and that they created themselves. I mean, on some level, it can happen, definitely. So I'm not getting real new age with this. But having said that, there was somebody that I knew who got cancer, and I'm thinking, well, all that anger had to go somewhere. It had to go somewhere. And luckily, this person realized that, and they were able to turn that around for themselves. And they were a testament to the fact that in that particular case, maybe not in all cases, in that particular case, their illness was a direct representative of the amount of anger that they'd carried through their lives, and that they were able to reverse it by getting rid of that anger. So that was them. And so it does happen. The other side of it, the ones that are really positive, but you can see they're seething. That's even almost worse, because then they're harboring the negative thoughts, and they don't even get to dispel them through talking about it. There's just, and that's really those people. It's like they walk through the world and all glass around them shatters. It's just just seething, horrible rage. But I'm fine. Everything's fine. but again, not to be judgmental or to be manipulative or to point fingers, but just so that we can view ourselves. It's easy to see it in others, but it's harder to see it ourselves. you know? And when somebody busts us on it, even innocently, how do we accept it? You know, I know for me, it's a lot of times when, you know, out of the mouth of babes, some kid will say something to me that's just like so true, and I'm thinking, you little bitch, you know. but you have to realize that you asked for the way to be made for you to have what you want. So okay, so let's recap and then we'll end. We have to know what we want in life. So I recommend list making. That's my thing. You do it however you want, but I recommend you take a piece of paper and a pen and you do this at least once a month. Update your goals. You should have a huge plethora of stuff you want to work on so that there's never a dearth of magical work for you to work on. Work on your most treasured goal first. Figure it out. Do whatever system that suits your fancy or that you feel the most that you have the most gift in or the most training in, but it should be incorporating somehow the use of your imaginative facility. And then find out what it is each and every day of your life that you are using your imagination on that is trying to negate that and stop it and reverse it. And even if you have to, an easy way to do that is to go through your day at the end of the day and just say, how did I do? Just go back through your day, through that reverie process. Just in that one, just with that one item, how did I do? What were my thoughts about this thing?
Is visually getting it.
Yes.
Yeah, and that
You got to write it down. You got to see it. You got to want it.
2 steps ahead of it.
No.
You know, you have to be.
No, you got to really want it, and you got to do your work on it. But then you've also got to do the work on what are. So we call them payoffs. The reason I don't have this thing in my life. The reasons I don't have this thing in my life. What ways, and this is great waning moon work for this goal. What ways do I, to use that horribly overused term, sabotage my success in this? And what are the payoffs? What do I get to prove? What do I get to have by not having this thing? So if your thing is financial, what do I get to do, be, or have that is what is it giving me? What is the neurotic gift that it is giving me by not having the money? Or if I'm sick, what is the neurotic gift it's giving me for maintaining the illness? Do people get to feel sorry for me? Do I get to blame people? Do I get to say, see, nothing ever works for me? Do I get to be right? What is it? What are the stuff? And that's and I wouldn't just let it be in the ethers either. I'd write all that stuff down too, so that you can bust yourself over and over. You want to bust that open, and so that it's over. And the only way to do that is to bless the shit out of it. You just want to just flood it with positive energy. And just at any time that you notice that you're doing it, it's the fastest way to get through that is to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Just it's like, oh, it's all right. You're just human. It's okay. Just stop doing that. You know, you don't have to like make it worse by saying, oh, look how horrible I am that I had that thought. It's just forgive yourself. Bless it out of your life.
People,
Yeah.
oh shit!
I know. Well, my grandfather was very abusive to my grandmother, and I think she left him when my dad and my aunt were very little. But I have a feeling he was pretty abusive to them, and I think it messed. How could it not mess them up to have that happen? And in doing my genealogy, I realized that my grandfather had his mother, and nobody knew this. I discovered this. His mother died when he was like 1.5 years old. And his dad, which they did a lot back then, remarried, but married the mother's sister and had a bunch of kids from the mother's sister. So my dad not only lost his mom before he ever got to know her, but then was an imposter, was just the outsider, and was the other kid for all of his life. And they didn't, I don't know anything about that, what went on there, because we're not in touch with that side of the family, but it puts things into perspective. It was a lot easier to forgive somebody when you understand the story. You know, I didn't have a lot of stuff on my grandfather, but my dad does. And I'm hoping, because I haven't been able to sit and talk to him about what I found out, but I'm hoping this gives him some way to have some closure with that, because he never talks about it. But I know it's got to weigh heavy on him. So I think sometimes too, if you can put things into perspective and understand what led up to it, it's easier to forgive too. You know. And forgiving ourselves. I mean, it's just like who didn't do the best that we could possibly do at the moment? I mean, I'm asking everybody to do something hugely heroic and unnatural, basically, and that is to stop being mired in all the negativity. The fact that you're in the negativity, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just being human. That's all. We're asking you to do something almost inhuman, almost superhuman, by getting up out of that stuff. So definitely don't get on your case for having negativity, but then stop it. Okay, anything else before we end? Oh, happy Witches Workshop.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment and do a little spell. Light the cauldron. And we just relax the body and mind for a moment again, and we see ourselves on that beautiful mountain in the center of our circular grove of trees. And in the center of our circle, that bonfire blazes forth. And we'll bless this fire with the power of our imagination and the power of our consciousness of our imagination. And what we'll take with us from this is our ability to be aware of how we are using this awesomely powerful tool that we've been entrusted with. Thank you very much. Together we say blessed be.